Welcome back to another episode of Building Enablement. This is a web series where we talk to enablement professionals and dive deep into the details on programs, events, trainings that they want to highlight, basically what they did and how they did it. I'm Stephanie Middaugh. I run the enablement program at Divvy, a financial tech startup out of the Utah area. And today my guest is Taryn. Taryn, how do you pronounce your last name?
Rosada.
Rosada, thank you. How are you? How's it going?
I'm doing well, all things considered. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm super excited to highlight your program today. When we were kind of talking about the prep during our prep meeting, I was really excited because I think the program that you're going to highlight is super applicable to what's going on in the world today, what a lot of enablement professionals are probably, dealing with and finding. So I would love to first get an intro from you around kind of who you are, what you do, where you're at.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have currently I lead learning enablement and sales and partner operations for a company called Yotpo. And Yotpo is an e-commerce marketing platform. I've spent the majority of my career in New York City and in roles in both enablement as well as HR on the traditional sort of HR side of learning and development and lots of enablement work. And in addition to my full-time roles in enablement, I have a part-time passion, I call it, for fitness. And so I actually teach bar and HIIT classes at a studio in New York City called Extend Tribeca. So.
Nice. I took ballet all when I was a kid. So when bar came out, that was one of my favorite things. I was like ballet classes and like fitness all in one. This is great. I haven't been able to find any places around Utah though. So I need to maybe try and search harder
Well,
or
there's
something.
lots of virtual options now, that's for sure.
Well, now it's in the world of COVID, I can only imagine.
Yep. And any workout you want.
Awesome. So let's dive right in. What program did you want to talk about today and kind of highlight? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I thought it might be interesting to share a bit about a recent product training and certification program that we ran at Yotpo. So Yotpo acquired a company called SMS Bump, which is now an SMS marketing part of our solution. And so, we acquired them in January earlier this year. I was going to say last year. It feels like it was a long time ago at this point.
What day is it? What year is it?
Yeah. I don't know. But we acquired them in January. And so then, shortly thereafter in March, we were sent home and everyone had to work remotely. And Yotpo is very much a culture of, our sales team is in New York City. We have a small office in London as well, but we're primarily all based in the office and came to the office every day. And so, the original plan was a little bit different than what we actually had to execute when we moved remote. And so I thought it would be interesting just to share a bit about how that went and some of the learnings that I got from that.
Absolutely. This is a super relevant topic right now. So I'm really excited that we're going to dive in to the meat and potatoes of this program. So you kind of touched on it a little bit, but I just want to dive into it, maybe reiterate it for a second. What problems were you trying to solve with this training initiative or program?
Yeah, so I think the problem became, how are we going to do this remotely? The ultimate, objective was to train our sales team and prepare them to be able to pitch and sell a brand new product. And then, with the added challenge of COVID and everyone being remote, it was, how are we going to shift the plan, which was originally had a lot to do with classroom training, and do that remotely successfully. And so, just took some thinking and sort of what tools do we have at our disposal in order to help us do that.
Nice. And so what was your thought process when you were, I would say maybe let's talk through your thought process when you were originally creating the plan. In the ideal scenario, you mentioned a lot about classroom training, in-person training, which I know for sales teams that are all in the office, my sales team included, was that way before COVID hit. And then how did you kind of shift that to then address the very daunting task of handling remote learning and training over a Zoom or a virtual platform?
Yeah, so typically with product training and certification, I take sort of a three-pillar approach. It's very much a blended learning approach that includes sort of level one being recorded videos in a learning platform. And so they're able to get sort of that foundational knowledge and they can refer back to that content as needed. Level two is usually classroom training. So that's the application piece. So we've set the foundation via the learning videos in the platform. Now they come into the classroom, hopefully with smarter questions and a little bit of knowledge in order to go deeper on those key concepts and topics. And so the classroom sessions are very workshop focused. There's a little bit of presentation, but then most of the time it's breaking people out into groups to allow them to workshop around some of those concepts and topics. And then the third layer is certification, which can happen one of two ways, but traditionally for us, we move it back into the learning platform where we use sort of a pitch recording technology in our learning platform in order to facilitate that step three, which is certification, right? So, foundational knowledge in the platform followed by application in the classroom, and then, further applying that knowledge through certification and showing that they truly did sort of grasp and understand, and they're now able to pitch and successfully talk about our product. And so that three-pillar approach has traditionally worked really well. And so I didn't want to stray too far from that format, but it was that classroom piece that was super challenging to figure out how are we going to do that virtually. So that's sort of the setup of the program. And do you want me to talk more about how we actually executed on it?
Yeah, let's dive into that piece.
Yeah, so the level one, the learning, the videos in the learning platform was already completed. So I had actually worked with our, product marketing specialist on the new SMS product to record a series of learning videos. And usually that actually follows a format of at least 3 core videos. The first being what is the background of that video. So historical context on the product, just general industry information and sort of setting the stage for then video 2 is usually the benefits and features and benefits. So what are the features of the product? What are the benefits at a high level? And then video 3 is traditionally how do we talk about it in market? What are some of the questions we get from customers? Sort of 101 level introduction to pitching it. And then video 4 is usually around the competition. So who are the competitors in the space? How do we speak against them? What are the key differentiators for Yapo? And so that part of the plan remained as is, and we were able to record those videos virtually. So sometimes we do those, I'd say like somewhat professionally, where we actually have someone come in to film them and then edit and produce them for us. However, given we were remote and that was no longer possible, we actually just used the learning platform, which allows us to record those videos directly within there, whether that's voicing over on a deck or just speaking directly to the camera. And so we were able to execute on that part. And then it was the second piece, the workshop-focused classroom training, that I had to get a bit creative with. And so Zoom has a breakout rooms feature. And so when I was creating the agenda for the classroom trainings, I wanted to be able to keep them as workshop-focused as possible, because that's where we find the most success. If people are able to if we're able to sort of call on them and force them to get a little bit uncomfortable and actually practice some of the things we're trying to teach, it's much more successful and prepares them better for certification. So we use the breakout rooms feature of our call software. And so the flow of those classroom sessions was as follows. We had the product marketer sort of go through a number of slides just to reiterate some of the key concepts we covered in the videos, and then we would break them out for 15, 20 minutes into breakout rooms. And so I would hit the breakout room button, everyone would head to their breakout rooms. We had a Google Doc where they would follow along. they'd create a copy, and then we'd bring everybody back to the main room and sort of call on each of the groups to share what they were working on. And then the product marketer, the specialist, was able to coach them, give them feedback based on sort of the results that they shared from their breakout sessions. And that actually went really well. And we were able to, I think we did a total of 5 virtual classroom sessions over the course of 2 weeks. And so it was nice also to be able to sort of slowly build it and scale it out where it wasn't just one long day of training. We were able to break it up into pieces, which seemed to also be more effective, which was interesting. And so after that part, then we were able to move back into the learning platform, which you can do from anywhere. And they, followed the steps to get certified. And for sellers, it was about pitching and demoing. And then for our SDRs, it was sort of doing a mock call and email outreach and showing us what that looked like. So overall, I was super pleased that the classroom piece went as well as it did. And I was a bit surprised given I anticipated more challenges there.
That's great. I think the breakout room feature, I've heard a lot of enablement folks have leveraged that in kind of this like this virtual training world. And I've heard it's a lifesaver. So this is great. Did you kind of poll the sales teams to find out how they felt it went or how they enjoyed the breakout room feature? Did you do any kind of that feedback loop with them?
I did. And, we did immediate feedback after the very first session, which was generally positive. And then, towards the end, after we got through all of the classroom sessions, did another check-in, and feedback was overwhelmingly positive. I think everyone is kind of equally surprised at how well it went given the current environment. And so, just breaking them out into small groups really forced them to, and really drove accountability in their participation. So because there were only 3 to 4 people per breakout and we all had to have our cameras on, it kind of forced them to interact and participate. And then I think part of the success was also in giving them very, very clear instructions. So I would create Google Docs ahead of each classroom session, which clearly sort of outlined the key steps they were to take in the breakout sessions. And then I included the link to the Google Doc and the invite to the meeting, as well as via a chat in the Zoom once we were in there. And so really there were no excuses for them not to know what to do once they got to that breakout session. And so they were able to use that Google Doc, make a copy for their group, and then they were held accountable when they came back, and we called on each of the groups to share their learnings.
That's huge. Setting the stage, making sure that everybody understands, especially in a virtual environment, communication can maybe sometimes fall a little bit, if you're not having that one-to-one or in-person communication. So I think, over communicating, or what you think might be over communicating, and breaking it down into such a detailed description is super important to make sure everybody's on the same page and understands. Especially in a virtual environment, they might not be as willing to raise their hand and be like, I don't get it, I don't understand what you're asking of us. So going that extra mile and breaking it down further than you might think is relevant or is needed, I think is super key.
Yeah, and I'd also say an important call out is with the breakout rooms feature, we were able to have our specialists, the ones who were leading the training session, jump from room to room. And so, I would drop them into one of the breakout rooms initially, and then we'd be sort of chatting on the side, and I'd say, hey, I'm going to send you to the next room. And so they could check in, coach people along the way, answer questions that they might have, versus having them just waiting around and sort of not doing the activity. That also helped to drive additional accountability by sending the specialists through each of the rooms.
That's great. I love that. So for the overall program, I assume this was obviously a strategic initiative from the executives. Did you present the project plan to them? Did you have to kind of get their sign off on it? What did that executive buy-in kind of look like for this initiative?
It was actually interesting. They accelerated the initial timeline for rollout. And so that was another part of the challenge in getting this all together and launched virtually was our timeline increased significantly. And so we had to sort of speed up the process. Um, I've found that with product training and certification, the best way to get sign off is to really give them clear line of sight into what the training plan looks like. And so with everything, I start with the learning objectives. So as a result of this session, attendees or participants will be able to do what? And clearly outlining what those objectives are. Before building the plan, getting them to sign off on those and align with this is what we expect them to be able to do after training. Okay, now let's build the training plan in order to actually deliver on those objectives. And so I have sort of a standard template and format that I use for building out that agenda that helps people to really understand. And I break it down even by learning objectives. So each session sort of clearly shows what the learning objective is, what is the format for that session, what is the content we're going to cover, and this is how much time it will take. And so, after getting the sign off on the objectives, then I put together the agenda and get final sign off on that before launching the program.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. And then let's talk about measuring results. And because obviously that's what everybody cares about is what impact did this program actually have? So how did you go about maybe defining those measurements? And then how did you actually measure the results?
Yeah, so I think ROI is one of the most challenging things as enablement professionals to be able to do and to measure. And so with this particular program, because there was no historical information, it was a brand new product for us, we sort of focused on three parts in terms of measurement and our metrics. So the first was just initially participation and feedback. How many people participated and went through the program? And then what did the feedback look like? Did they have a positive experience? Was the content helpful? Did we miss the mark in any ways? And so that was sort of level one. Level two was then looking at sales. Because this was a new product, we had some expectations in place in terms of what sales would look like. And so we had what we're calling an overlay team, like a product specialist team who helps to sell this product. And so while they're there to help each of the sellers push it through, the sellers are also held accountable to being able to pitch and sell on their own. And so we used sales as a metric to see sort of, okay, post-training, what did the slow increase in sales look like and how is it trending today? And we were very pleased with those results. And then level three, we weren't able to execute, but what I'd consider, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do it in the future, is with a solution like a call recording software. So we don't have that at Yapo today, but we're interested in looking towards getting a call recording software, which I think would have really helped us level up in terms of measuring the ROI of the program and being able to see, okay, now how many times is our new product mentioned on calls and how many times are we talking about it in demos? What are the key questions coming up? What did it look like when a customer asked a question about a competitor? How did our sellers answer it? Was it in line with how we trained? And so, sans that, we are looking at some of the call recordings and we're also, tracking the metrics in Salesforce, but in the future, I hope to be able to do that with additional product and training certification.
Well, and apologies in advance, you saying this, and any vendors out there are probably just going to hit you up automatically. So, well, your inbox is probably going to just blow up with conversational intelligence recording software emails. So sorry.
Yeah, it already is, but can't wait. Feel free to read.
So it kind of sounds like you achieved the outcomes that you were hoping for. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think all things considered, the program went really well, and we've seen success so far in terms of sales. And we're, we'll likely do sort of a refresh of training in the coming quarters, just to continue to focus on education on that product. But so far, so good.
Love that. And then what ultimately surprised you looking back on the program now, kind of this hindsight 2020, what surprised you? What maybe were some of the things that you didn't expect to see or that, either maybe didn't go the way that you were hoping, aside from having to move everything to virtual? What were some of the surprising pieces?
Yeah, I think the most surprising piece, honestly, was how well Zoom worked for us and leveraging the breakout rooms. It was actually really effective, and that surprised most of us. I think even the participants were pleasantly surprised by the experience and that we were able to do training successfully while remote. And so that was really the biggest takeaway for us, is that okay, now maybe I am able to utilize this in a new way going forward. And if we continue to work remotely, we'll be able to include those who are remote or who are actually in the office.
That's great. And I love the very strategic kind of approach and the methodology behind how you approach, the setting up of the strategy for the program and measuring results. You've got these three pillars, you've got three phases. This is all very structured, and I love this. This is fantastic. As someone who is a very organized person, this just speaks to my soul in so many ways.
I like to bucket things and sort of use bullet points, and I think it just makes it easier to digest and clear about how to execute as well, if we're keeping it sort of organized in phases, pillars, buckets, whatever we want to call it.
I agree. I love it. So one of the things, just kind of wrapping up here towards the end, I love to give people some kind of actionable takeaway, feedback, whatever it is that they can take from this interview and maybe implement in their own enablement practice or program. What's something that you would maybe give to some of the folks listening to this interview that they could take away from it?
Yeah, I'd be happy to share, and I think I referenced it earlier. I sort of use a specific format for building the agenda. And I think that would probably be a helpful template for other enablement folks to leverage when they're thinking about building out classroom training of any kind. And so I'm happy to share that as a resource following today's call.
Yeah, I've never met an enablement person that will turn down an example from someone else. So I can't imagine people not taking you up on that offer. That's fantastic. Taryn, thank you so much for sharing all of your insights on this program. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best avenue for them to do that?
Yeah, I always love to connect with people on LinkedIn, and then I'm happy to share my email as well. If you want to share that when you share the template, and if people have specific questions, I'm always open to chatting and networking with others, and especially those who want to break into enablement. I actually have a lot of those conversations, which I love doing. So happy to share my contact info.
Awesome. That'd be great. And Taryn, you're also part of the Enablement Squad Slack channel. So if anybody listening isn't part of that yet and they're in the enablement space, hit me up. Let me know. I'll get you added in there. And then you can kind of have that conversation with Taryn and a lot of other enablement folks. It's a really great community. Taryn, any last thoughts?
No, I'd actually love to just echo how awesome the Sales Enablement Squad Slack channel is. It's one of my favorite resources. And so I appreciate that you took the initiative to set that up. And I think we've got a really great group of professionals in there. And I've used that channel a number of times to get advice, especially on things I haven't done before, or even things I have, just to put some new thoughts into place. So that's been helpful, and appreciate you having me on today. This was fun.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining, Taryn. And thanks to everybody who watched this video and this interview. If you or someone that you know is in the enablement space and wants to highlight a program or an event or a training initiative that they took care of, give me a direct message or thread it in the thread below. And until next time, keep building, everybody.